My perspective on it is that gentle parenting may have gone too far. Just like any paradigm shifts in cultures, what happens is there's one thing that we don't like, and then so we overcorrect. And I think gentle parenting is the overcorrection of the way that we wanted to be treated when we were kids. Hello, and welcome to Growing Strong Roots, an occupational therapist's perspective on parenting, self-regulation, and resilience. I'm your host, Leanne Bloom, owner and occupational therapist at Oak Bloom OT in Oakland, California. In this episode, we're going to speak with my partner, Tom Guiney, about parenting. And he's just going to ask me some questions. It's going to be organic, and we're just going to try this out and see how it goes. Thanks for being with us on this ride, and check us out at oakbloomot.com.
A little tiny bit about me. I don't have expert credentials, but I am an experienced parent. I have 2 kids of my own and 1 step. A big topic these days is gentle parenting. Given your years of experience now working with your client population and your own parenting experience, what's your take on gentle parenting where we are now in 2026?
Let's first define what gentle parenting is. From my perspective, it's more of a hands-off approach, very loving, almost helicoptery in the approach that you are there with the kid. 100%. You are validating their feelings and really feeling them with them, taking ownership almost of their feelings, really trying to protect them from their own feelings. I think that's my view of it. We can provide a more formalized definition of gentle parenting along with resources in the notes. But my perspective on it is that gentle parenting may have gone too far. Just like any paradigm shifts in cultures, what happens is there's one thing that we don't like, and then so we overcorrect. And I think gentle parenting is the overcorrection of the way that we wanted to be treated when we were kids. So maybe we came from a background that our parents yelled at us or hit us or spanked us or really reprimanded us in a way that we didn't like. Okay, fair enough. Didn't like it. Got it. Yeah, punishment is hard. Discipline is hard. Learning is hard. So I think in retrospect, we overcorrect for those challenges that we felt in childhood by providing a type of childhood experience to our kids that is more gentle in nature. Not reprimanding our kids as harshly. Spanking is not allowed anymore. So I think to really criticize parents for speaking firmly with their children, I think is looked down upon these days. And the approach is a bit smug in nature. And so I think that we may have taken it too far. And now we're raising kids that are a bit more entitled. And how dare you don't validate my feelings? My feelings matter. And having tantrums about it, overly dependent on adults to validate their feelings, to make them feel good, to nourish them in a way that they can't nourish themselves.
What are some times that you think gentle parenting is the right move? And then what are some places, the situations where you see it being the wrong move? That's one question. Another question is, can you give me some examples of negative downstream effects from kids who've received a lot of this gentle parenting approach, which is very child-focused? It doesn't pay a lot of attention to societal norms. It doesn't pay a lot of attention to how the child's behavior affects other people. An approach that is so focused just on the child's feelings. Can you just give me some examples of kids who've been treated this way and what negative effects we've gotten?
Sure.
Presumably in your practice, you've seen a lot of different clients. And some of those are probably good examples of the gentle parenting approach, this very child emotion-centered approach gone wrong. Can you describe some of those behaviors or results to me?
Yes. So yes, I feel like it's gone a bit too far and that there are negative effects downstream, especially as the child gets older and they've gotten used to this approach because their parents aren't with them at school. They're not going to provide this kind of validation in other locations beyond the home environment. Not always, most likely not. And so how do we as parents prepare a child for other environments outside of the home? Societal norms, certainly, we need to consider that. What is the school environment like? Maybe you're sending your child to a private school with 10 kids in the classroom and they can provide a gentle parenting approach. Cool. Awesome. It's also $40,000. Can you afford that? Is that the community that you want? These are some of the questions that you may think about. And do you as a parent want to sustain that level of interaction as the child increases in age and gets more demanding with the version of gentle parenting that you've set forth? That becomes the norm. As a result, examples from that have been children who are incredibly demanding and controlling of their parents, to have a hard time separating from their parents, demand that the parent be with them at all times, especially at bedtime, really dependent on them for one-step directions throughout their routine. You must now be in the bathroom with me while I'm brushing my teeth at 8 years old. You actually know I need you to brush my teeth for me. And it creates this anxiety within the child that they can't manage their own selves. And so I can see where that can go wrong.
Paint the picture for me of a specific example.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I'm working with a couple of different families that come to mind. One where the child was not able to fall asleep without their parent with hands on them. And when they would take their hands off of them to go to sleep, the child would have an extreme reaction to it and cry and bang their head against the crib, and at one point crawled up out of the crib and fell on the floor to try to get their parents to come back if they had left the room. So with all of my clients, I take parent coaching very seriously and I embed it into the program. That's what you're signing up for when you go to Oak Bloom OTs. You have to do the parent sessions. You have to be willing to do the work, because occupational therapy is not going to work as a standalone service that you drop your kid off for 45 minutes in a clinical environment and that they're going to magically be fixed. If I can get the parents to do what I'm recommending, then the effects will go a lot further and a lot quicker. So in this case, I'm working with the family on letting go of their child while to go to sleep, not being reliant on their touch to go to sleep. And I understand as a parent, you want to soothe your child, and especially one who's very strong-willed and is willing to do above and beyond, hurt themselves to get the parent to attend to them.
So if, let's just say I'm a parent who I've read all these books that tell me this is the right way to do it. My first step is to sit with the child when they're freaking out or having some kind of behavior. I listen to them. I validate everything. Yeah, I understand you're having really big feelings about having to put your blocks away right now. What would you tell me to do if I'm like one of your clients' parents? Like, let's say my child's issue is around me needing to be with them like all the time. I'm reading between the lines of what you're saying. What it sounds like we parents are creating here is kids who are entirely dependent on adults to mediate their entire experience. Would you agree with that sort of assessment of it?
I think
Like
that could happen in
dependent.
extreme cases. I don't think that's the norm. I think that is especially could be at risk for that when you have a child with an undiagnosed challenge or a diagnosed challenge of behavioral, if they're having some behavior associated with it. These kind of strong-willed kids that often I work with often have diagnoses of ASD, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, attention deficit disorder, and those are emotional regulation challenges in their diagnoses. And so we're especially at risk with those kids. And I wouldn't say mediate every single experience because I do believe in brain plasticity. I do believe that children can change, and especially given the right environment and the right firm and loving approach, then you can get away from having every interaction mediated by an adult.
So this client of yours who needed to have their parents in the bathroom with them, and you said put their hands on them for them to be able to fall asleep, what steps would you give me to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, there was two examples. There was the one where they were in the bathroom and they were brushing their teeth for them at 8 years old. And then there was another where it was a 2-year-old child where they were in the bedroom where the parent needed to be in the bedroom with their hands on them to go to sleep. And that, which by the way, would take an hour to an hour and a half of the parent like trying to slowly go away, and then the child getting upset, and then the parent coming back, and then the whole thing starts all over again. And that would happen multiple times. And then again, it would happen at 2:00 in the morning, and then again at 4:00 in the morning, and then again at 5:00 in the morning. So this family was not sleeping. So the approach in that situation, how do you manage that behavior, I think is what you're asking.
Yeah, if I'm the dad of the kid,
What would I say to that family?
He needs my hands on him to fall asleep for an hour to an hour and a half, often several times a night. Mm-hmm. What are you telling me to do?
So I would say, let's really think about and track the behavior and what we're actually dealing with. Okay, is it an hour and a half? How often does that happen? Is it every single night? What are some of the instances where it's worse? What are the instances that are better? So we need to have more information, more data to track and understand what's going on with why the child is requesting such an intense level of interaction. Then I would, with the sleep training thing, I really like this. I think it's called Berber chair method. And this works especially well of neurodivergent children because they don't respond necessarily to the same approaches that neurotypical children do, especially around sleep training, where you can just put them to bed and they can cry it out for 20 minutes and that's it. These kids are intense that I work with. They are outside of the norm of what is normal, right? That's why they're here. So they may be screaming, crying for an hour, 2 hours. They may be drawing blood from them banging their head on the crib, having self-injurious behavior, hitting themselves, all kinds of things that we see. So it's extremely difficult for a parent. So let's keep that in mind when we're talking about, oh my goodness, of course we would want to be there for our child who's having this level of intensity. So in this particular situation, I was recommending this Ferber chair method where they just take a chair and at first it's just there and maybe their hand is on the child. Take the data. Okay, it takes an hour and a half tonight to go to sleep. Tomorrow night, we're going to do an hour and 20 minutes. And the next night, we're going to do an hour and 10 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And we slowly decrease the amount of time and then we slowly make more space between the parent and the child. So you're slowly backing off. Prompt fades or fading prompts is another way of looking at that. So you're decreasing the amount of physical prompts that you're putting on the child so they become less dependent. And this approach I really like for almost any kind of behavior. And, grounding it in this example, you spend maybe a week 2 weeks, 3 weeks, slowly backing up. And in this particular instance, I've been working with this family for about 6 months. And oh my goodness, wouldn't you believe the child's falling asleep on their own within 20 to 40 minutes. So that is huge. Now this family has a little bit more time and peace of mind. And then they told me, oh, also the 2 a.m. time wake up also is helping. Now that particular one, they said what's helpful is one of those alarm clocks that turns green when they're able to get up out of bed. This particular family was willing to still get up at 4 a.m. They're maybe early risers. They don't mind as much. At least they're getting that 2 extra hours of sleep. At least they're getting their 2 extra hours back in bedtime. So they're okay, fine. Come and get me at 4 a.m. Light goes off at green. She's able to stay in her crib or her toddler bed now, and now is able to go into their parents' bed and fall asleep for the rest of the morning.
How old's this kid?
2.
2. And are parents still sitting in the room for that little while?
Sitting there for about 20 minutes.
Not touching the kid anymore. Backed off. They're halfway across the room by now?
I think they still have their hands on the kid.
Okay.
Just slowly but surely, they're like, we're feeling pretty good about this one, though. They're no longer really requesting my help on it. They feel like they've got it. They are enjoying that time with the child in the evening. So that's important too. If it's not a problem, then it's not a problem, really. But is it sustainable for you and your family? You have to consider that. And really, as an occupational therapist, I'm looking at independence and long-term outcomes for these things. So is this going to work for you? This is something I've asked the family. Is this going to work for you to be continuing to do this? And you're talking about having another child. Is that possible with this kind of setup? And what's going to happen if you rip the Band-Aid off too fast with this kind of kid, you're going to see some of those behaviors come back.
So pulling it back to the topic of gentle parenting, is it the fault of the approach, or is it just this kid as a whole special situation?
I think what happens here is the child starts ruling the roost, right? And I think a lot of it is a dynamic. It's a family dynamic that happens, and the child is spirited, intense, whatever, has various underlying things going on, and that creates this dynamic. I don't want to say it's anybody's fault, actually. I think that we look at these things as it's part of our culture, and we want to do the right thing as parents. And we hear about Dr. Becky Kennedy, we go on Instagram, and we find like what's going on in our culture for how we're raising kids. Because you know what? I never took a parenting class before I had kids. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm a professional, and I still had challenges with raising a child. Parents aren't at fault here. I think what happens is a power dynamic starts playing out, and then the child starts taking control of the situation and to their benefit in the short term, but in the long term, it's not to their benefit.
So what you're seeing is the currently popular gentle parenting approach is the parent ceding too much power to the child?
Yes.
Letting the child rule the roost in your terms, that the whole household is orbiting around what this child says they need. But I come from maybe a slightly different school of thought. I have a definitely more hierarchical view of family structure. Like, we're the adults. We know stuff. Our job is to teach them. And yeah, they've got feelings about it. But also, that's too bad. Sometimes, like, I don't know. I was a relatively typical developer myself when I was a little kid. And my kids are typical enough in a big middle hump of the bell curve. So that approach worked. Just like sometimes the answer is just no. And I know you're upset, but you're going to learn to cope with being upset. That's the thing that my beef with gentle parenting, I feel like it easily translates over into helicoptering, which, if you ask me, works against our central job as parents, which is to help kids grow up and become independent. Like if we do everything for them and we mediate all their experiences for them, especially their emotional experiences, how are they supposed to cope when they move out? I mean, they are going to move out. That's the plan eventually.
Well, I think as parents, we're often guilty of seeing kids younger than they are because that's the way that we first see them, right? They're babies, they're infants, they are dependent on us. Call them the benevolent dictators. They dictate everything that we do. You need food? Okay, I got it. We need diaper change? I got it. You wanted some tummy time? I got it. You know, you are the resource for this child for the first year, minimum. Like 100% of their needs are dependent on the parent or the caregiver. And so we get a little bit stuck as parents seeing our kids as infants. And you know what? Developmentally, they do get older. And even with ADHD, autism, what have you, even developmental delays that are profound, kids that have failure to thrive and things like this. I've worked with a variety of types of diagnoses and types of children and developmental challenges and needs and various things like this. And children do mature. And it's hard for a parent to always have that lens that their little baby is no longer a baby. So I think that's a little bit where we get stuck as parents.
Right. Stuck thinking of the kid as several years younger than they are and treating them as less capable than they are. My experience has totally been that kids rise to the level of expectation that you put on them. Like, you ask more of them, and they actually do more. Maybe not always, maybe not in your neuroatypical population, but even with them, I mean, we've got a atypical developer in our household, or neuroatypical kid, and my interactions with him have mostly been setting a much higher bar than he was used to, and he didn't like it. He did not like it. It was
hard
it
on
was
the
not fun.
parents.
It was
Let's
not fun.
Be clear about what the parent is experiencing and what they can handle, because I think what happens is that it's too much for a parent to deal with. It's much easier to just get them the snack, to give them the iPad, to just sit in their room for an hour, just brush their teeth for them, tell them what to do every step of the way. That's all easier than dealing with a knockdown, drag out, blow up, meltdown.
Yeah, and I've gone through some of those around here, and you know where we are now? It's working. He has risen to the expectations that I put on him. I'm so proud.
That's why we're here, is that I feel like this is a success story, and this is something that we are looking at for other children too. We have this lived experience every single day where we're working with a neuroatypical child, and I've known him for 12 years, and it's always been a struggle. And things that are just beyond the scope of his comfort are still a struggle. And it takes him a minute to kind of understand and get used to an idea that it's outside of his comfort zone. He'll have his frustration around it. But as a parent, you learn to armor up on it, learn that this is who this kid is. He's just a bit like that. He was also the kid who was in the crib demanding our attention. Thank goodness he was a good sleeper, but there was a lot of demands being placed on me. And as a new parent, you just, oh my God, you meet them because you're just like, oh, really? He really needs this. You don't know what you don't know. And so, and telling you, that's why we're doing this podcast, is so that we can share these strategies with other parents out there that are struggling, that are in it, they're in the thick of it. And they may not have the resources to reach out to Oak Bloom OT and get occupational therapy. trying to make this a little bit more accessible to a broader audience so that parents can have more skills to parent.
And sounds like one of those things might be learning to distinguish between what the kid needs and what the kid wants. That sounds like one thing you're saying. And also keep in mind that the kid is always growing, always getting better, always developing. And so it's on us to keep up with the fact that they're actually capable of more. And my vote is to don't bring the expectations down. You just have to weather the storm for the kid to reach that expectation. How do you recommend we proceed as parents so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the way we were raised, which is what gentle parenting has taught us, without creating a generation of kids who are entitled and unable to handle their emotions for themselves and ultimately really unable to fly the nest on their own? Where do you see the line?
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, gentle parenting is something that is an overcorrection for the way that we were parented as kids. And I think a bit of that comes from the kids are pushing our buttons. They're getting bolder in their choices for how to react to parenting. And part of that is because we've been so gentle with them. And so there's an in-between line here. And part of that is teaching parents how to find their line for themselves. What are your non-negotiables? What are the things that you're willing to really stand up and armor up around? And that could be anything from screen time limits to eating healthy foods or getting exercise for your kids. Ultimately, raising healthy kids is about raising healthy adults. So you have to determine for yourself, what are your non-negotiables? What are you willing to fight for, especially if you have limited bandwidth around all of this? Ask yourself, what kind of parent do you want to be as far as independence from your child, and creating that independence in parents and creating that independence in kids? Ultimately, what we're trying to do here is let them fly, teach them the skills to fly. So we do that by setting firm boundaries, and sometimes we need accountability for that. And that's why Oak Bloom OT is here. That's part of our program, is the parenting sessions, the parent coaching piece of it. It's holding the adults in the child's life responsible for doing their side of the independence, the side of the parenting that I feel like is needed in these kids that are harder, that aren't following the rules, that aren't just doing as they're told. They are having big feelings, and how we react to those feelings, yet hold the line. Sure, validate, but also there is a consequence that may need to be reinforced. There may need to be limits set in these different areas, and you have to decide as a family what's most important to you.
I would like to offer a couple alternate phrasings to that. When you say there may be consequences, I would urge us to say there are consequences that are predictable and consistent. I feel like that sounds ambivalent. And another potential rephrase I'd like to offer, interpreting what you just said, is what kind of adults are we trying to raise? Because that's what these kids will be someday.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think having firm boundaries, no ambiguity, and being firm and knowing what they are ahead of time, having conversations with your family so that you're on the same page and you know what the consequences are and are able to stick to them. Some people make agreements with their family and they're not able to actually stick with them. They'll say, yeah, sounds good. Sure. Nope. They're supposed to be doing their homework before doing a screen, and here they are with the screen. Well, that means you lost your screen for the rest of the night, and holding them accountable for that. and holding the parents accountable for if they're making an agreement with the family, that they're holding their end of the bargain. And to your point around what kind of adults we want to have, what kind of adults do you want to have? What kind of kid do you want to have in your house? Is it one that's going to be defiant, just have back talk and just kind of ignore what you're saying? Do you want to have that person now go into the workforce and is defiant with their colleagues and with their employer? How's that going to go for them? Let's think about the long-term effects of gentle parenting or permissive parenting, I will say, and not having consequences, not having firm boundaries with your child. What are the consequences long-term for this? Let's look at the bigger picture here of what it means for their livelihood, their ability to make money for themselves, and their ability to sustain relationships with their romantic partners, but also their friendships. There are standards, there are societal norms and expectations that we must teach our children to follow, or else they won't be successful. They won't be independent. They won't be earning a paycheck. They'll be back in your house. And now what? Is that what you want? Maybe it is. Maybe you like that. I don't know. But for me, that's not what I want. And I'm really trying to move in the direction of pushing my kid towards independence, as difficult as that might be, especially for a neurodivergent kid. I've had to learn the skills to armor up and put my foot down to stand for the things that I really believe in, such as physical exercise, healthy food, and hard work, focused work. So I can help you with that too. I've had to do it myself. Our team can help you with that at Oak Bloom OT. This is something that we do. This is something that we're trained as occupational therapists to do, is to create independence in humans across the lifespan, from babies all the way up to the day you go from this earth. That's what we're trained to do. And part of that is working with families and parents to develop the skills on how to raise independent children to become independent adults. Thanks for listening. I hope you can subscribe and find me on social media, all the places, Oak Bloom OT, and we'll see you next time.